I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Amy Eliza Wong. She is a transformational coach, speaker, conversational intelligence expert, and the author of Living on Purpose. Once her first child entered her world, Amy began questioning everything that had made her who she was and couldn't bring herself to return to what had been a rewarding career. One day, while sitting hopelessly on the floor in her closet, inspiration struck. It wasn't about figuring it out. It was about feeling it out. This insight became the first of 5 deliberate choices she discovered that one must make to lead a life of fulfillment and joy. Today, she leverages this philosophy in her best-selling book, Keynotes and Coaching Practice. During my interview with Amy, we talk about the power of the mind since she was a young child and how her people-pleasing tendencies took her down a path she needed to recover from. We discuss in this episode the conscious versus unconscious actions we take, effort versus action to help someone that is in need, and releasing yourself from the shoulds in life that lead to unhappiness. During this episode, we do talk about eating disorders. So if you or anyone you know is suffering from this condition, please reach out to someone to get help and speak up. We are here to offer this story in order for a way for us to all identify when we are in need, whatever that may be, so that we don't turn a blind eye to ourselves and not understand the effect that we're having on the people around us. I hope you enjoy this episode, and please share this episode with anyone that you think would benefit from it. And it is always really beneficial if you share, subscribe, and also leave comments on our podcast episodes so that other people know how this podcast is providing value to you. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I am very excited today to be interviewing Amy Eliza Wong, and she is with Always on Purpose. And Amy, do you want to just get started and give a little background on yourself, and then we'll get right into your story?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having me, Amy. I'm delighted to jump into this conversation with you. So yeah, my name's Amy Wong, and I am an executive leadership coach, and I partner with executives and founders and their teams on all things growth, transformation, and flow. And one of my areas of expertise and passion is communication. And the reason that this is so juicy is because everybody wants to get better at communication, because they innately get that it's in this medium of communication that everything happens. And so this medium, when we can get this right, everything's possible. And the way I see it, this medium of communication, there's just so much here. It's what's so powerful about this is truly this is where everything happens, because we don't live in a vacuum. Everything is in this medium. And the way I see it, it's a great entry point for the deeper work, because all communication is really just effectual of the relationship we have with ourselves, the beliefs we hold. And so depending on how deep a client wants to go, we'll go as deep as we need to go. But the way I see it, communication is a fabulous entry point.
Awesome. Well, so glad to have you here. So excited to get right into your story. And maybe you can just give us a little background on where you grew up, just a little background on your family, what your parents did for a living, and so forth.
So I'm really fortunate because my parents are best friends, and they'll be married 50 years.
Oh my God.
November, which is awesome. Yeah, we're going to have a big party. And they're so fun. They're my favorite people. I'm very blessed. I was raised in a nightclub. So they bought a bar in their early 20s. And my dad was this incredible rock and roll drummer. And they toured, they did cool things. They had awesome, yeah, they were just cool. My parents were super cool. So I was born in a bar. I was raised in a bar. And you know, and my parents are just awesome people. They're wise, they're kind, they're good to each other. They're lovely humans. My mom's very metaphysical. My grandma's very metaphysical. So I was raised in a household where we were constantly talking about the power of our minds, the power of consciousness, just conscious thinking, where we place our attention, we create. And I was fascinated by this at a very young age. And that, I think, is what sparked my deep love, interest. I would even in all things consciousness studies. So starting at a really young age, I started reading spiritual books. I found Thich Nhat Hanh in fifth grade at the public library and started meditating in fifth grade. I was reading people like Wayne Dyer and Ram Dass and Krishnamurti at really young ages. And I just loved it. Oh my gosh, I loved it. Same time, what I love about it, it's all I wanted to spend my time on. It's like, how are we not focused on this more? This stuff is fascinating. Just this idea that our thinking, our minds, our attention, our consciousness is so powerful. I remember learning about the placebo effect when I was really young. And I remember thinking, if this isn't proof that we have way more power than we realize, then I don't know what is. And I don't know why we're not talking about this more. I just remember feeling so dumbfounded at humanity for not caring about this more. And a couple things, because my dad is a musician. Music's really big in our house. And so I started playing piano at 5. Okay. So also I'm also now a musician. So I'm super in love with piano, play all the time. Oh, wow. So naturally, I think what happened was this love of music and being a musician, and this love of, and I'll just tell you, it's a search for truth, really led me to the study of mathematics. So I studied pure math at UC Berkeley, and that truly was just born out of a deep, 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 deep interest and fascination. And so many people would say, Amy, what are you going to do with this? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. They're like, do you want to teach? And I'm like, well, I love teaching, but I don't think I'm meant to teach math, but I love teaching. And so throughout my childhood, I was very enterprising. So I started a tutoring business. I had my own piano teaching business. I rented a piano studio from my music teacher at one of the biggest music stores in Sacramento. That's where I grew up, Sacramento. Okay. So I was just balling as a kid. Yeah. I was making money. I was making a lot of money. I felt like I was on top of the world.
So you said young age. When did you start that?
So I would say it was probably, I started tutoring and started teaching around, I was 9th grade. Okay. Yeah. So what am I, 15 at the time, 14 at the time. And so funny. I have a 15-year-old son. Like, yeah, I know. I should know this, right?
Yeah. So like, as far as starting a business doing that, did someone ask you originally to get help, or what made you want to do this?
Yeah.
At that age? Yeah.
It's always so organic, Amy. I don't remember waking up one morning and going, I'm going to start a business. It was just kind of all signs and all ways merged into that direction. And it was effortless, truly effortless. And boy, did I love it. I really loved it. Yeah. Yeah. At this end, so this deep search for truth and this wild obsession for mathematics, that's all I wanted to spend my time on. And so what ended up happening, my mom had a daycare in our house. So my parents had an interesting story. So they had a bar, and then they ended up moving. My dad moved on from that. He's got an incredible story himself, but long story short, ends up at Dean Witter. It's now Morgan Stanley at the time. And he just, and doesn't have a college degree. He's one of those incredible self-made stories that just took off, and he's so exceptional. So made a huge leap of faith and went from the bar business into the financial industry. And so my mom started a daycare in our house when I was maybe around 9 or 10. I think that's about right. And so we had a lot of little kids in our house. It was just loving chaos constantly. And I also have a younger brother and a younger sister. So much going on. And I am perfectionist. I am, people pleaser. I am, very organized. I'm very responsible. And so my hypothesis is that it was the combination of the chaos in our home, the insecurities I felt in middle school and high school, and this deep need for control that led to a horrible eating disorder. So I ended up falling prey to a really, really consuming eating disorder that changed, changed everything. However, my deep love of math and deep love of music and studying, that was all there. So I was a machine. I was a complete machine.
So what made you insecure in middle school?
I don't know what kid isn't insecure in
Yeah.
middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just because of my makeup, I've always been a way less now because of all the work I've done, the work I do. But back as a kid, oh man, I was such a people pleaser and so worried about upsetting the apple cart. Just so didn't want people to be burdened and so wanted to make everybody happy. And so, so afraid of other people's judgment. So you enter into high school or middle school, the hormones are raging,
Hmm.
kids are mean. It's just a very uncomfortable time. And
Yeah.
so, and the work that I do now, obviously, is completely has been catalyzed by all the work and all of my own personal
Right.
experiences. I would not be able to do the work I do today if it wasn't for,
Yeah.
the trials and tribulations I've gone through. But, part of what I teach as a leadership coach, communication coach, a lot of us, what we don't talk about is that death to the brain is rejection. Our
Hmm.
neurobiology is hardwired to seek acceptance, belonging, and approval. And that is life. That is safety to the brain.
Hmm.
It's not just a nice to have, it is a fundamental primal need. And so, as a child or as an adolescent, you're desperately craving that sense of acceptance. And so, you know, you want that. And then I know for a fact now that I'm in high school, I'm a freshman, and I just feel so out of place. I feel like everybody's cool, but not me. And
And
the
what
cool
didn't feel
girls,
cool?
what?
What didn't feel cool? Like what,
Oh,
where?
it's just that deep sense of inadequacy. Like,
Mhm.
oh, they've got the cool brands, they've
Mhm.
got the good looks, they just seem so at ease. Doesn't look like they're worried about anything.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? And
Uh-huh.
that's what's going on the inside. But on the outside, that doesn't show. I've
Right.
I've got friends, I'm in sports, I'm involved, but I'm just so uncomfortable on the inside. And so one day something snapped, and I remember very vividly just being so fed up with the feeling, so fed up
Yeah.
that is something clicked in my mind, and I'm like, I am done feeling out of control and inadequate. And I remember I was constantly comparing my body size to everybody else, and I was very athletic, right?
Hmm.
So I'm not skinny, I'm definitely not overweight, not, I mean, I'm thin, but I'm athletic. But I'm looking at the girls that I think are quote unquote cool, and I'm like, well, they're skinny, so maybe that's why they're so at ease. It must be because they're skinny.
Yeah.
That's why. There it is. So peace of mind comes when you're skinny. And of
Yeah.
course, back in the day, Kate Moss was our idol. Do you remember that? Like,
Right.
oh,
Uh-huh.
right.
Yeah.
you know, so I just snapped, made a decision, and I completely just I went down that path, and it was a dark period,
Yeah.
between age 15 to 16 all the way up until mid 20s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but again, I'm at the, along a while back, it was hard to talk about because there was shame. Now there's no
Yeah.
shame. I just see it with so much gratitude. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Did your
It's
parents notice it was happening?
oh, my poor parents, they were beside themselves.
Hmm.
I hid it from everybody except for them. And they wanted desperately to be able to help me. And they threw everything they had at it. But the truth was, I wasn't ready to heal, Amy. I just wasn't.
Right.
And so my inability to heal was not for their lack of trying, their love, or their care, or their attention towards it. It was just that my soul and my self, it was just not,
Hmm.
it wasn't time. And that was yeah, it was a journey.
So it's interesting that you, from a very young age, were reading about consciousness and all of that from your mind, and then you did something that was unconscious.
Totally.
And so,
Totally.
was there anything in your mind, like, because it seems like, I
Oh,
mean, I don't know you well, but it seems like you are a researcher,
yeah.
um, and are deep. So while this was going on, did you have any conversation about this happening? Were you researching yourself while it was happening, or were you just letting this go? You just needed to have a piece of you to not be perfect.
I would say yes to all of it.
Uh-huh.
And I would say what was really more true for me at the time was in the midst of the pain, and I truly say pain. I've,
Hmm.
s- unless it is so, if you haven't had an eating disorder or an addiction of
Hmm.
some sort, it's
Yeah.
hard to describe. But while I was in the midst of it all, I deeply knew that I have a strong rooted belief within myself that I will overcome this. I will not have this forever. Not
Mm-hmm.
sure how it's going to happen, but I knew my mind was strong, and that I knew. And it wasn't even a belief, it was a knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a part of me, and it wasn't an entirely conscious part of me, but it's more so maybe a subconscious part of me
Mm-hmm.
that knew that this was on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and I trusted the process. Now
Yeah.
on a normal waking consciousness, I was miserable and surviving, and it was very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a deep belief that that it, that this would all come together at some point. So that ran in the background. And so was
Well,
it entirely conscious? No,
yeah.
but it was there, and I'm certain because of all of the exposure and study
The
that I
work
had
you
done to
had,
that point.
yeah, that was clicking it, because like some of that is like I talk about that with yoga, like it's an insurance policy, right? Like you never know when you need to click into those practices, but they come at times when you need it, right?
Yeah.
And so you knew it. So what kind of, and I think this is really important, is just like the power of the mind, because I've dealt with other types of abuse in my family, and there's a hard situation from people that try to support people that are, you know, in some kind of addiction, where you feel like they could just stop. Like, why won't they just stop?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
And, I remember being with a family member and the doctor talking to me and saying, like, it's harder than like cancer, because cancer, you go to the doctor and you just say,
Yeah.
give me the medicine, and
That's
not
right.
like as far as pain or anything else, but like it's not someone's mind fighting you to get the help.
Right. That's right.
And addiction is a disease,
Right.
and it's very hard to get someone to get the help. You can't just prescribe the help, like you
No.
said, if
Yeah.
someone's not ready to hear it. So, how would you advise other people that,
Mm.
might be listening, that have someone that has an addiction or some sort of, serious condition like you went through, that is,
Yeah.
something that is a power of the mind? Like,
Yeah.
how do you help them in that process?
So this is a big answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to back this up by saying, if this is it, what I'm about to say is at all interesting to anyone, I highly recommend the book, The Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabor Mate. He is phenomenal. And I would say, first it's just to understand that we don't want to see addiction, or even disease for that matter, as a thing that happens to us, but instead a process that we're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And if you accept that this is a process that you're going through for, and this might be hard for folks to hear, but for your highest health and wholeness, then it changes the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so something's arising for us to take a look at, and something needs to shift. And I'll tell you, it's at the belief level. And what
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Gabor Mate says is that, I mean, and this is going to sound pretty intense, but, the personality needs to change, because there is a significant imbalance in the entirety of one's system and self.
Mm-hmm.
And addiction, disease, cancer, all of these things arise when we are deeply imbalanced. And it really points back to the relationship we have with ourselves and the relationship we hold with the world around us. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always going to map back to a lack of self-love, a lack of an inability to, because you lack self-love, it's hard to love another, feel compassion. And so I mean, this is a really big conversation, but
Mm-hmm.
in short, I would say if we can look at these very painful experiences we go through as a process that's here to show us something, and we surrender to that, allowing ourselves to open up to the idea that growth is not just possible, but is supposed to be inevitable, then
Mm-hmm.
by releasing the resistance we have through this paradigm of this is unwanted, this is unwanted, this is this thing, this is, when we can actually release that resistance, healing happens so much faster. And
Yeah.
so I would say, it just comes down to trust.
Yeah. And how would a person that loves that person help? Is there a way to help that person at that time?
You know, a lot of people want to apply effort and action
Mm-hmm.
towards and to stuff that we want to fix, that we want to help. And we think that
Mm-hmm.
it's behaviors and it's things that we need to do to fix,
Mm-hmm.
decisions we need to make. And I would say, given what I've learned, given what I've experienced, given what I've researched, I think one of the most powerful things we can we can do to influence and to help is really it's our presence. And
Mm-hmm.
when I say our presence, what we can offer is when we look upon this loved one or this family member or friend, you see them as whole and complete.
Mm-hmm.
You see them and you love them unconditionally, and you trust their process, because the truth is, who who are you to say what their process is supposed to be?
Mm-hmm.
This is their process.
Mm-hmm.
All you can do is really shine the light of loving awareness towards them. And when you hold them in such high regard, that really starts the healing process, because when you can truly see another, that's when there's an opening for that individual for them to see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the good news is it's one of the easiest things we can do, is to just hold them in such loving high regard, trusting that they are on the right path, releasing this fear and surrendering to the process. But it's also the hardest thing we can do, because we were so trained to do stuff, right? And we're
Right.
like, that's not enough. I need to go
Right.
call this rehab center. I need to do this. I need to do this. Now, look, you can do that too. But I think where we really get the most bang for our buck is in our own loving presence and the attention and the that love that we offer to them.
Yeah. Which is, a hard thing because, someone has to be, like you said, ready for the help, ready to hear it. You could say it 10 times
Yeah,
until the 10th time they hear it,
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like the first time they ever heard it. So what was the thing for you that clicked, or that
yeah.
in your process you changed?
So I write about this in my book. So my book is called Living on Purpose. The
Hmm.
subtitle is Five Deliberate Choices to Realize Fulfillment and Joy. And so, the book itself is a roadmap out of self-sabotage, false perception, and the ways in which we hold ourselves back from truly the life we're meant to live, into a life of joy and meaning and inner peace and freedom. So I share my story because, a lot of folks need to know, like, where did where did this roadmap come from? And
Right.
in so I mentioned that because I do write about this, but I'm at Cal, and I have this very consuming eating disorder. It's anorexia by day, it's bulimia by night. I would, almost not eat nothing during the day, study, 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 study. Oh, and by the way, work out twice at ridiculous intensities. I mean, I was so overscheduled. I was an Air Force ROTC. I had multiple jobs that I took on. I was even in a hip hop dance troupe for a little while. And I'm majoring in math, which is no easy feat, right? But
Right.
oh my gosh, it was so much work. So I'm doing all these things and I am a machine. And I remember there's so many herbal stores on Telegraph, and this was before they banned ephedra. I would buy bottles of ephedra, and I took so much ephedra during the day to keep me awake because I just needed energy to keep me going. And then at night, I was so spent. It was around, I would just totally crash at 11, around 11ish or so. Now, mind you, I have a best friend who we are inseparable. She's majoring in math as well. We do everything together. We study together. We go up the hill to watch the sunset every night before we go back to study every night. Like, we are together all the time, only except for when I go back to the gym for a second time and she goes off to the philosophy building because she got a minor in philosophy. But anyway, so I'm keeping it secret from her. I'm keeping it secret from everybody. I am very tight-lipped. I don't want anyone to know about it. But at 11 o'clock, I would send her away from my apartment because we'd be studying all night. She'd go home to go to sleep. She'd never let her spend the night. And I don't know how I managed to pull that off without it. It just that's how it worked. And I would crash, I would fall asleep, and then my body would wake me up at 1 a.m. or so. And it was always in that extremely rummy, like almost sleepwalking state that I would find myself in the kitchen binging and purging for hours because I was so hungry and so
Hmm.
exhausted that I would binge and purge. And so, sometimes I would even make midnight runs, or like I do remember certain times I'd have to run to the store to get more cereal or something in the middle of the night, 24-hour Safeway. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
horrible. And this lasted for quite a few years. It was my senior year, college, and my best friend and I are leaving our abstract geometry lecture, and it's early evening, and we always part at a certain corner because she goes to her apartment and I'm going to go to my car because I have an off-campus apartment. And she says to me, Amy, come over. You're coming over tonight and I'm making dinner. And I was like, no, like, no, like, oh, that like just breaks the rules. No, well, first off, I never went to her apartment because she had roommates. And it's not that I didn't like them. I loved them, but that just wasn't the thing. I mean, I had my own apartment. So we come to go to my apartment and I always cooked because that's how it goes. I don't,
Yeah.
nobody else cooks for me. And so I was always very generous with the cooking. So for her to say, I'm cooking, it was like, and so she kept at me. And, I know she saw something in me that day because I was so broken, Amy. I was so gaunt. I was so lifeless. I was so tired. And she just said, You're coming over. And I'm not taking no for an answer. And I thought, oh, okay. And so I ended up going over to her place and we're having we are now 21 because it's our senior year and we just had turned 21. So that's a big deal. So
Right.
she had a bottle of wine and she makes veggie spaghetti and opens up, a cheap bottle of wine. And we're talking and she says to me, Amy, I have a secret I have to share with you. And I'm so ashamed. And it's so hard for me to say. And I'm like, oh, what? She goes, oh my God, I'm so scared. When you leave for your second workout and I go to Moses Hall, I smoke. And when I get home from the day before we meet up again, I smoke on the balcony. And I thought I just did it for fun, but I tried to quit last week and I can't. I can't stop. And I'm really scared. I hate to think that I'm a smoker. I'm a smoker. And she just started sobbing. And I am looking at her like, what? Like, this is my best friend in the entire world. And I have absolutely no idea. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, and I just hold her and we both sobbed, for the collective pain that we felt. Now I'm just holding her
Mhm.
and I'm like, it's okay. So she's sobbing and I'm holding her. And after some time, I said, dear friend of mine, I have a secret that I want to share with you too. And I'm really ashamed and I'm really scared. And so I opened up and I'm crying and she's listening and I share for a while. And after we're all, we're done, she looks at me and she goes, honey, I know, I've known and it's okay. And it's going to be okay. And I just remember us crying. And in that moment, something lifted, Amy.
Mhm.
And I've never felt so free. Went home that night, and for the first time in 6 years, truly, there was not one exception to this when I say this. First night in 6 years, I slept all night. My
Wow.
body did not wake me up. And I
Wow.
woke up and I thought, because that part of me I was terrified of. It's the reason I would never have my boyfriend sleep over. It was the reason I'd never have family sleep over. It was
Mhm.
the reason I would never let her sleep in the night. I was terrified of this werewolf that would come out because I couldn't get it under control. And I was free. And I remember racing we had a math lecture that morning and I was like, oh my God, I did it. She was so proud of me and I was so proud. But the two of us together, that was the healing for both of us. From that point forward, she never smoked again. And for me, that began the path of my healing. And it took a couple years. Like bulimia pretty much disappeared. Took a little while to ease into a normal diet. And then, long story short, wouldn't you know, I ended up marrying like a really big restaurateur and executive chef in San Francisco as my husband, who owns a huge wholesale bakery, that supplies to the West Coast. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
talk about the ultimate
Have it in your
healing, right?
face all the time.
Yeah. 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 But
Well, and I think that's an example of what you were talking about, of how someone can support you. So she
mhm,
waited till you were ready, and she also offered up her own,
yeah.
almost to help you to offer it up,
Oh, totally.
you
There's
know?
something about
So,
it's the secrecy and
mhm.
the shame that
Yeah.
and that's another thing to share with folks about if anyone's struggling with addiction or any of these things that we feel plagued by, that we're
Mhm.
tortured by. 100%, it's the secrecy and the shame. It's more so the shame that we
Mhm.
feel about it that has its grip on us, and and in order to release that grip, we have to release the shame. And one of the most powerful ways to release the shame is to share.
Mhm.
And that is so scary at the thought,
Yeah.
but it is so transformative. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that's what really catalyzed that healing. And there are a handful of beliefs at play that kind of led to this point and then the true metamorphosis from the old me to the me that I am now. And one of the things, that I coach a lot on, that I talk a lot on, I even title my entire chapter 4 on this, has to do with the word should. And I was completely brainwashed by this idea that there's a way I should be. And even around my career, around my path, there's a way it should be. There's a way it should go. But that is the biggest trap that has us living an inauthentic life that is filled with suffering. When we are aligned with this idea, false idea, that there's a way I should be, or a way this should be, or a way I should look, or a way this should go. Because this whole this paradigm of should according to who? Right. And so that was a lot of the big breakthrough.
Well, and
that
I find
went
that
through.
interesting because it doesn't seem like your parents followed that path. Like it's not that you had that example. They seem to very much go with the flow, at least a little bit from what you said. And then switch paths when they needed to.
Totally.
So where do you think that belief system came from?
I think it's the cultural ether that we are immersed in. And I think that, our inputs very much determine our output. And we have to be careful about what are we inputting? What are we reading? What are we listening to? What are we watching? And as an adolescent and as a, developing teenager and young adult, you're going to be very much influenced by what your friends think. You're going to be very much influenced about what's in the magazines. We didn't have social media back in the day. We didn't even have the internet back in the day, but which is wild when you think about it. Mike, what's funny? My kids are like, wait, there was color back in the day. You didn't live in black and white. I'm like, oh my God, you're hilarious. No. They're like, did you have working toilets back then? I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys. But I think it's just that deep neurobiological need to be accepted has us taking on the cultural conversations that aren't ours. Now, it wasn't my parents, but I loved my parents and I'm unconditionally loved my parents, but I was very much influenced by the world around me. So I took it on, and then, of course, I think it's our educational system, because when you think about it, you go to school and we get indoctrinated by this word should. You should get good grades so you can make your parents happy, and so that you could do really well, so that you essentially can get into a good college. Now you should get into a good college so you can get a good job. Now you should get a good job so you can make lots of money. You should make lots of money so that you can then be happy. And so we enter into this hamster wheel. I call it the conditional roller coaster. It's the unwinnable quest where we are constantly searching for the next, and we get indoctrinated by this. Okay, I should be following this path that's been set forth for me, and we completely lose touch with what we actually want. We're not even trained to tune into what we want. We are completely indoctrinated into this idea that there's a path that I should be following, and if I follow it and I finally get to the end point, I will achieve happiness. But there is no end point, and it's a trap. And we become, it's so challenging, but that right there, I would say it's a combination of all of that has us living by this. And I think it's the worst word in the English language, personally.
Yeah. And you always have to watch yourself.
Yeah.
Because where it comes out sometimes, and then you're like, well, I don't really mean that, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I know. It's like, wait, sorry. Well, let me take it back.
Yeah. So how did you end up on this path to end up coaching others?
Yeah. So because I studied math, I ended up in the tech industry. So I was at Sun Microsystems for 10 years, and I absolutely loved it. And I was rising the ranks, and I was doing really well. And, I had started interning at 18 when I was at Cal. And so by the time I graduated, I had pretty much a full-time job lined up. So, and I was just plugging along, and it was grand. And my entire identity was caught up in my work, right? Because if you're a perfectionist, if you're an overachiever, if you're a pleaser, this is your life, is I'm following the shoulds and this should. And I had this superficial happiness of, this is my life and I am so happy. But am I happy? Yes, I'm happy. Yes, I'm happy. Yes, I'm happy. Am I happy? I don't know, but I'm not even going to ask that question. I am happy. I think I'm happy. Right. And so I just keep plugging along. And it wasn't until my first child, who, he was born in 2008. And I had this massive breakdown because it was so groundbreakingly transformative to have this being into the world that you end up loving so much that the entire axis of your life shifts from it's around me to now it's around this child. And now everything is called into question.
Yeah.
Who am I? What do I really value? Why am I really here? And so because I couldn't go back to work, because I couldn't, not for any logical reason. And that's what really whacked me out, because I am a master of logic. Having studied math, oh my goodness, I am a master of logic. And this was illogical for me to not be able to go back. And this was really a matter of the heart, but I couldn't figure out what is wrong here. Why can't I go back? And if I can't go back, then what am I going to do? But if it's not that, then what? And it was identity paralysis. It's what's known in cognitive sciences. The term is identity paralysis. And it was very consuming. And it was truly, it was a dark night of the soul. And I had a big breakthrough in my lowest point. I was in my closet. And, I've got this infant, and I have no other words to describe it other than a divine download. It just hit me like a bolt of lightning. And it was in my lowest moment where I think the only word I have for it is surrender, because I was so knotted up inside. I was so upset at myself for being so knotted up, because I'm thinking, God, my life, I'm like, I've got a husband I love. I've got this beautiful baby boy. We've got a great life. What the heck's wrong with me? Why? And so, gosh, there was just so much. And I remember throwing my hands to the side, and I looked up to the ceiling in my closet, and I just said, I give up. You show me the way. I don't even know who I was talking to. I was just say, you show me the way. And in that moment, I was hit with this electrifying insight. And it was, Amy, you're going about it all wrong. It's not about figuring it out. It's about feeling it out. And everything about that statement in the entirety of its wisdom, and its divine wisdom, in completely flooded my system on a cellular level. And I understood deeply what that meant and what needed to shift, and everything shifted in a moment. Because I'll tell you, Amy, what came to me, and it was beyond logic or reasoning, it just completely infiltrated every cell, which was, oh my gosh, we're all going about it wrong. Why? Because everything we want, everything we think we want, it's not for the thing. It's not for the title. It's not for the money. We want the feeling we think we would have as a result of the thing, but nobody's thinking about that way.
Right.
Nobody's asking themselves what they want to feel. They're just asking, what do they want to do? What do they want to achieve? Nobody's asking what they want to feel. And so therefore we end up following the path of should to the thing, oftentimes forsaking the feeling. And it's exactly for this reason that we end up with great lives on paper and we're miserable. And everybody's walking around, in a tremendous amount of pain and anxiety, midlife crises, divorces that are because we are going about it all wrong. And so that totally, it shifted every aspect of my being. And from that point forward, I committed. Okay. So, and I've never looked back. From this point forward, my job is to only follow my inspiration, even if it doesn't make sense, especially if it doesn't make sense, because guess what? If I'm figuring it out, that's the long path to what I think is going to bring me joy. But if I want the path of least resistance to the path of most abundance, I must follow the feeling. So what is that? I'm following the thing that makes me go, where there's relief, there's expansion. And so that's when I called upon all the things that I had studied up to this point, the nature of duality that this existence is predicated on, the expansion and the contraction. I'm like, oh my gosh, I see it. So there's going to be an expansive quality to something or a constricted quality to something. And so if I follow the insights, the instincts, the inspiration that feels versus right. And by the way, like, a lot of us will choose this thing because it sounds like such a great idea and there's so much energy there and it just makes sense. And oh my gosh, I want to do this. Right. But that is figuring it out. And it's not that figuring it out is bad, but I guarantee you're not going to get the return that you're hoping for, that you choose in the choice that makes you go. Now, oftentimes the choice that makes you go, usually isn't sexy. And you're like, oh, that's not the sexy choice.
Yeah.
But man, is it the choice that just infuses your life with joy and fulfillment and meaning. So anyway, I chose that, committed to it. And very quickly, it was almost as if my life became magical. The amount of synchronicity, the amount of flow, the amount of delight. And then all of a sudden, it was like there was just this lit path in front of me. Ooh, the Science Non-Duality Conference. I need to go to that. Ooh, this book. I need to read this. Ooh, that author. I need to research him. Wait, tonight, he's speaking at the church down the street and he lives in Massachusetts and I'm in San Francisco. This is wild. Like, it was just two. And pretty soon, the field of transpersonal psychology came into my awareness, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And again, I followed my feeling. I'm like, I must study this. And my sweet husband was like, what are you going to do with that? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know, but I got to study it. And so I did. And little did I know that it was the synergy and the blending of this very rigorous degree in pure mathematics and this quite rigorous degree in transpersonal psychology. Now, mind you, very left brain, very right brain. The
Yeah.
blending of it blended itself perfectly to coaching. So coaching found me in 2011, and it's just been a dream come true.
That's awesome.
And it's been amazing. So and in the process, I had my second beautiful child, and it's just been, yeah, I just feel so blessed. And so what I do now as a result of having been on this path, and because of the teacher I am, I know I've been put on this earth with that ability, is to help others break through this very insidious paradigm of should and learn to trust themselves because their feeling is right. And all of us want to live a life of joy and meaning and purpose and fulfillment. And really, the way to do that is to wake up to how brainwashed we are to this false idea that there's an ideal we need to align ourselves with.
Yeah. Well, that's a very inspiring story. I really appreciate you sharing it. I think there's so many great things for people to take away from it. I like to end our sessions with just some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So you pick a category, either family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
It's just spiritual.
Okay. Things or actions that I don't have that I want.
Don't have that I want. I think because of my conditioning, I'm really quick to invalidate my feelings and just put a ton of logic and reasoning and objectivity and invalidate and just kind of blow over how I actually really feel. And that is an area of growth for me, is to honor that. As much as I teach it,
I know,
it's like,
right?
I'm like, God, I really need to eat my own dog food here.
The goal is awareness, not that we
right. Exactly.
Okay. Things or actions that I do have as far as my spirituality that I want to keep.
I have to say, Amy, I feel so blessed that, and it must be as a result of all this work and the path that I'm on and the thousands of coaching conversations I've had over the past decade. I truly see every single human as whole and complete. And I feel nothing but compassion for every single individual, even the ones that you would think it's hard to feel that for. And that has just come out of my own evolution and transcendence work. And and honestly, this is just what the world needs. This. And I feel very, very blessed that truly is a way of being and not something I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Things or actions I don't have as far as my spirituality, but I don't want them.
Well, maybe on the flip side of that, I would say, I don't have the ability to judge. And it's funny because my husband, he's quick to judge. And I'm like, really? Like, oh, come on, but I feel so like I really have a hard time. I just don't, and I'm reminded of Henry, Longfellow's quote, and it goes something like, if we could see, if we could read the secret history of our enemies, then we should find in each person's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. And so that I think is, yeah. So I'm grateful for that.
That's a really great quote. And so the last one is things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
That I do have that I don't want. I think I maybe I answered it around disarming or like just not honoring my feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I care so. It's the pleaser in me, the old habits of pleaser.
Yeah.
I so place my needs. Yeah. So that, I would say that's going to be a lifelong journey for me.
Yeah.
Is letting go of that pleaser.
Be aware of it when it pops up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, great. So is there anything that you want to make sure that we didn't talk about today or that you want people to walk away from our conversation?
Yeah. Well, I would say, just remembering that you are whole and we are all whole and complete innately. And what you're after is a feeling, not a thing. And freedom comes the moment you decide that there is no way you should be. There is no way this should be. There is no way this should go. And to truly examine your relationship to this word called, this word should, the paradigm that we're enslaved by. And I would say if if you genuinely want to live a life of meaning and joy, first wake up to this word and how you relate to it, and then trust yourself. Trust your feelings, trust your intuition, because what you really want is a feeling. So allow yourself to get clear on that. What do you want to feel? And then just intend to follow the feeling instead of the thought, the strategy. And that is the path truly to the life that you were born to live.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, all these great lessons for everyone to walk away from. And I look forward to people hearing our conversation.
Thank you. Me too. Thanks, Amy.
And now for my mindful moments. On my interview with Amy, there was lots of great takeaways here. And again, just to reiterate, if you suffer on any condition, whatever that may be, it's really important to recognize it and ask for help. And in this case, we did talk about her eating disorder and how much that affected her detrimentally until she was able to get the help that she needed. And so we want to make sure that anyone listening to this identifies with whatever you might be suffering from and make sure to speak up to someone who cares or look up on Google who can help you so that you can get started on this path. So from her early age, I think it was really interesting that she had these parents that were creative and artistic, and she so resonated with their wisdom. And her mom really taught her the power of your mind. And very early on, she started having a special interest in consciousness and really being fascinated on how powerful our mind is. And I think for so many people, we weren't even aware of this at the age that she started really reading about it and really wanting to go down that path of understanding it even more. And when she started from a young age, really understanding how she was fascinated by the mind, and that moved into math and really being fascinated about how all of that works. And I think honestly, being an accountant myself and knowing many accountants, that many creatives, that I played music and was in art, are also fascinated by the puzzle of math and how it works. Maybe we don't always identify the link between the two because many people think, oh, if you're a numbers person, you aren't necessarily creative, which isn't exactly true. So in her path, as her parents started growing in their careers and she started getting into middle school, she started really realizing that she was very aware of judgment. And I think a lot of middle schoolers go through that path and really not identifying the self-talk that is happening in our heads and what it all means and what we need to do to be aware of it and take action on it, and how we get support from the people around us or even the people around us noticing that these things are happening. And so from this point, she started having this eating disorder because of really feeling that she wasn't enough or wasn't comparable to the other girls she was seeing. She had these feelings on the inside of that she was inadequate or asking what was wrong with her, comparing her body size to others, and really thought that peace of mind equaled skinny people. And she believed that all the way into her 20s. And so I think this is an important thing because a lot of times we don't even realize we have this self-talk going on inside of us. And that's really where meditation can help us a lot. Even when we take moments of silence can happen, meditation and movement, whether it's still or moving, but where we give our mind time to disconnect from everything around us so that we can really observe what is happening in our head. And this is a really important exercise, when she's actually asking herself, what's wrong with me, feeling inadequate, comparing herself to others, even the statement of noticing, thinking that the girls that were skinnier had more peace of mind. And when we are silent or in meditation, these are the times to ask those questions. If that starts coming up for you, that you are thinking those thoughts, it's really important to ask yourself whether that thought is true. And you might think initially that that thought is true, but ask yourself again if you absolutely know it's true. Because when you are asking yourself multiple times whether something is true, sometimes that helps you with questioning those thoughts that are going on in your mind and really realizing, is that thought true? And if I think about that thought, so her trigger, which started creating this habit or belief system, was that if she got skinnier, she would be happier, and started purging and sacrificing food throughout the day and so forth. And so those thoughts are a trigger to the actual habit or action that we're taking. And so if we're going to change a habit or a belief system, we actually have to go back to the thought that precedes it, or the environment that creates for us to have that thought, to see how we can intentionally change the thought that is going on in our head. And we have to be intentional about it. So if we decide that we don't believe the thought, then it's really important that we're coming up with what would be our new routine that we need to take in our lives to make sure that we don't follow that action or belief system any longer. So that might mean the times of day we're eating. And she talked a lot about that she would hide from people to do these things. So maybe we purposely put ourselves in situations to be around people in those times where we hide and see how we react to it, so that we do eat and not give ourselves access to the same things that we give ourselves access to when we're by ourselves. That we also look to see that, is that true about the belief of skinny being peace of mind? If you do any research on the most famous people, it doesn't mean that that equals happiness. And even when you look at people, just because they might look skinny doesn't mean that they feel happiness on the inside. There's not necessarily a correlation. And it goes back to the power of our mind. And we talked about the conscious versus unconscious. And this is very important, that we understand what's happening unconsciously for us, that's creating these actions, these thoughts, these things that make us feel sad or miserable, or that we're unhappy. And when we start changing those thoughts, we can change the habit. I've recently been listening to some other podcasts about this as well, and there's so many different diet plans out there and so forth. But the problem is that many of them fail because we think if that's the way this quick way to fix the problem. But if we don't fix the thought, if we don't fix the belief system, then it's very, very hard for something to be effective long term. And we have to actively tell ourselves the opposite. If we're telling ourselves something negative about ourselves, that even when it doesn't feel natural to tell ourselves those things, that we continue to keep telling ourselves the good thing until it does feel natural, until it does feel more normal in our bodies to think something positive. So when we talked about this, we also talked about addiction in general, because I had talked about with her, whether it be an eating disorder or alcohol or drugs or whatever that may be that you see in your life, there is a process that you have to go through to unwind it. And there's an imbalance in your body and your belief systems, whatever that is, but with yourself and with everyone around you, in order to get back to really loving who you are. And I talked to her about, what does someone do that is outside of the person that has this addiction or issue in their lives, because I have been that person before. And the problem is that when you're the person outside of someone that you care about, you might have someone in your life right now that is addicted to something or might have a disorder in this case, that a lot of times we go to solving the issue. We want someone to take action. But again, if that person hasn't been able to get to the process to even hear us, to be aware of it enough that the problem is hurting their life enough that they're open enough to the discussion, just pushing someone into action isn't necessarily going to be the fix, or are they going to even be open to it. So what we talked about was the importance of just being present with a person, that you see them as whole, you see them as complete, and you hold them in high regard, that you don't diminish them or pity them, that you actually understand that you cannot change this person. The power is within them. But what you can do is offer support. And I think this is really, really hard, that being someone that has supported someone going down a hard path is that you don't understand why this person can't just fix it, because you know the actions that you would take, but obviously your mind is in a different place, your conscious and your unconscious mind. And so that person knowing that you love them and that you're there to support them. But I do think that there is a line between taking too much on by a person that's not ready for the message. So you can offer support, you can help them, you can get them the help that they need. But what you can't do as well is be taken advantage of too. So the person that is supporting someone else is really important that you keep clarity of mind and that you do the same kind of exercises to truly understand, are you enabling the person? Are you supporting that person? And sometimes there's hard choices that have to be made in order to really shift that. And we talked about that with her best friend, that, it was her best friend really saying that she had a smoking problem that opened it up for her to say that she had this issue, and they healed together and they were open and honest with each other about this. But it wasn't about shaming the other person. It was about being there to support them, but also not taking it on themselves. And I think that's a really important thing. So in this session, we talked about that in so much in life, and that causes these things to happen in our life, we believe there's these shoulds, the way that life is supposed to go, the way everything is supposed to be. And we aren't living truly to who we are because we believe whatever that is, whether it's culture around us, whether it's the people around us that have put this on us, that we lose touch with actually what we want and what we value. And it's very important that we go through the process to understand what our true values are, and making sure that the things that we do are aligned with those values. And that really goes to where we talked about feeling it versus figuring it out, right? That there's the mind piece of just, these are the actions to take, versus feeling the pain that you're in, being able to disconnect, like my recent book talked about, where you can find those moments to really allow yourself to feel whatever you feel without judging it. It's really about observing it. It's really about coming out of that with research about yourself, and then saying, what actions can I take to bring myself into equilibrium? What actions can I take to bring myself into balance, so that what I'm doing is not putting something on myself that actually is not aligned with what I really need. But it's being really good to allow that to come up for yourself without putting stress on yourself about this, and being okay to allow yourself to feel things that maybe you don't want to feel in order to heal, in order to feel better. So I hope for you listening to this was helpful to you, whether it's you or whether you're supporting someone that's going through a hard time, that you can be that catalyst to support someone, but also just be present for them. And if it's you, just be okay with who you are, that everybody is a whole person. And we want to make sure that we let go of those shoulds and we allow ourselves to feel along the way and see where the journey takes us. There's no rush to the finish line, but what is true is over time, we will find our path and our journey if we listen to ourselves. So I want to thank you for being a part of listening to this podcast. It means a lot to us for those of you that put testimonials onto the podcast so other people see it. The more that you can do to get the word out about this podcast, the better, so that more people can listen to these stories, these guests that are so open and transparent, that want to share their story for the better of everyone. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.